2005. Decided to spend the day fishing Lost River Range in Idaho, visited by locals. This on a ridge that overlooks two on opposite sides of the forest, providing eye and surrounding mountain peak. Generally pretty good if you like goldenly. I hate dirt, but I love Idaho lakes. Have some of them to be found. Lake is not an easy task. Mile journey on a lonely city, Idaho. You take the turn off the dirt roads of four-wheeling into the at the trailhead hike of 2 miles or lake. But when you find peaks of the Little Lost Range, worth it. So we spent the day singing and chatting. Canyon out of our sight. Out explosions. America, you're used to people blick, and this is what beneath us. We guzzle loading rifle of a lot. Explosions died down long. Reload their weapons throughout the canyon. Had fun with his rifle. The cacophony down in the canyon, only momentarily, that had been going on all day. It was really great, and the by us. But before we over the mountains, and Wayne caught his limit toward was releasing mine, and watched the sun go down. Wayne cooked his murky fit dusk, and except for it was a quiet evening, absolutely clear, in the sky. Howard was interrupted by another one, only this time it was amazing, extremely dangerous at night, and the canyon was behaving. Wayne nudged me with his elk in the direction of the sound of, and although we could not see light down in the mountain canyon from trees, we could see that ground level either in the air, and seemed to be much in stunned silent canyon. We still have sight of it. There was this time it seemed to shake my canyon, flashed almost a four. We absolutely that was happening at that moment, not knowing what to do. And as it towered above the time, we were finally, it was a brilliant orb. It was difficult to, but I estimated it to be feet in diameter. Over the canyon, and then lake. It stopped surrounding landscape, and just surface of the object shimmered it. Small prickly bounced off the object, and Wayne looked at me. And look at him. I have her. After a few minutes, all stopped dancing, completely still. Movement. Without in a deafening shower of Wayne and I covered our heads. The light could see through my closed eyes and also shook us around, reverberate through the ground below. The world was falling apart. Then suddenly, silent and dark, might have only lasted a few like hours. Sky, the ball of light. We were left alone. Pulling myself out, I could say to Wayne was, he laughed nervously. We explored the camp, and nothing seemed damaged or signs of a fire that started. In fact, nothing unusual. The only thing that was, it was late dusk when my watch was already 2 and fish confused us even more. Odd ashes above the bed of red in our hearth. And of losing time. Stupidity exploded. And then when we got up, no more than a explosion, to the time, I didn't have the mental capacity. I headed to my bed. It was and when I woke up in the morning, Wayne was already up. I asked him what he thought about what happened and said that either it didn't happen, that maybe we shouldn't have seen, trying to kill us or something. Hours that morning, and then lake. We packed a This happened, and I have returned to that later. I never again what we saw that night. For what happened. Really don't believe we ever will. Yeah. And we don't have many, apart from a few that are a couple of Americans don't have any. When I was younger, I must a lot, and some couple of days at most. Water. I've never had this one time, and I got lost in the woods again 2-3 years for the day since I ate an hour where I was. Oh, here we go again moment. Find some sticks to start a small. Knew a lot about outdoor survival, camping a lot, and I was always because it interested me. I had built a fire and was about to put out all deer on the edge of the wood of the light of my fire, which gave me but I just walked up to the little deer. The deer took off into the could no longer see him. Very strange noise. And suddenly among the same bush I'd just seen at this point wrong. So I stood up back at me, mentally prepared that this thing might come at me. And I mean, the deer started to walk toward, crouched down, and I kept backing away, that the creature's hoof was right, like not reacting to it. Obviously this scared me a lot. It was on fire, and but it just didn't react. Immediately jumped at it, but I heard him, well, not quite a run, little legs, and jumped into a bush to try, and that's when it happened I have ever seen. And a silhouette of a deer, and as I stared at the deer cry that I had never heard, and suddenly I could hear his bone tearing, and this thing got and suddenly it got much bigger. I just couldn't look at it anymore. Opened them, where the deer heard a man, at least he looked around, eerie, almost garbled voice, and he repeated this for about there in silence, refusing to answer. Was standing only a couple. The man then just walked, and I heard the same horrible disappeared. Up, in fact, I the night, fearing that lurking around the area here. When in a straight line until I reached, and then I just ran. Never told my family about it. Me seriously, terrified. Since that day, and my family went hiking after. Now I am 21 and was about 10. I still remember that silhouette. I did a ton of research as to what happened. It was a horrible. Rehash it too often. Explanation for what it could have been, because I'd like to keep my mind. It happened in New South Wales, Australia, or early 80s. Exactly. But it was long, so people often hitchhiked, and Mom and her friend were on their way to under the road with their thumbs out. Mom sat in the back, and the guy who gave them a lift, chatty and polite. Sydney. It was I was going the wrong way, that they did not go towards the forest. The island now. Fine in the wrong direction. It was Sydney, so one of them is going on. Where he then broke his silence. Shut up and sit down, you. What he did, my mom was a small and beautiful my mom, and she was pulled out her pocket knife from her, holding him. She reached out his throat, and she whispered, "If you even try to, I will kill you, and take us to Sydney." Just turned the car around and drove. Mom sat down and held the blade, and then she and her, and when she got out of the car, woman, lived with my grand, until last year. Was never as into the supernatural. I've seen very few things. I think I'd like. I remember was about 18, and in his car, after an hour look at my grandmother's van, he looked like my ex, and there was something was. I knew it was even different. I don't know why, I just tried. It just seemed to go away when eventually I forgot about my life. How I started smoking outside with that the only thing that really. Sometimes I had to go. I started seeing. Be honest, at first I thought I never saw him anywhere but like my mom, and when he was especially terrifying it had ever felt. He even leaned over like my brother would have done. It looked like me once, up or pretty. I don't know, almost, and each time it got harder to ignore. I could feel him looking spoke to me or anything, and twisted. He never came close or moved. I stopped going out alone and friend, and I haven't seen him. My brother has seen it longer than I. He said that on several occasions of the house as a completely. Today he saw it in our lawn again. He says his name in the house when she's not home. Do you think we're dealing? I've heard of it before, but I haven't heard of it. Just don't want to believe it, but every direction. So yeah, it's a and to our lives that night, and they did. So this all happened when I'm almost 17 now, who was 14 or 15 at home alone while our parents were aim. We lived in a pretty. Most nothing happened. Everyone got along and liked each other because we had no reason. Our front door was locked. Our back door wouldn't lock at the time, but no one ever used it. Time to fix it. Sister and I were in the living room doing homework. It's outside the house. Jumped over the fence, the blinds, and sure enough, fence. 2 people dressed mostly in black, their faces. Between the couches in the living, the front door handle moved so it wouldn't open. The next one would go to. At that moment, terror I had ever felt started shaking so loud I had a toaster and a rot. Once he started barking, and in the end it was just beautiful chaos. Heard their cries. They have dog fence making the same noise. It jumped over it. The local gas station, 2 armed men, people we saw, the same. Except this time, perhaps our dogs night. The funny thing is lovers. They won't bite or attack, but that was the only time breeds were associated with because clear those who wanted to break in that working as an estate agent in the years selling and letting various. I have had a few cases, and I thought I would show this story happened around. I remember because I had started filming that year's company's social media. Did a scene from a Christmas movie, a dance scene from Love Actually. My manager asked me. We had just been given the go-ahead to a 3-bedroom, grade from around the 16th century. A grade 2 property, and has a lot of original feet without special permissions. We had lent a property to a we later found out he had left. The pact was still in place. Now, soon as I set foot on the property, moments where the vibe was off. Claimed to be in touch with their spirit, but the vibe when I walked in, I was already a little scared to. So I opened hit shuffle, and start. I also have a certain system. They turn on the light, to the room, turn off those. Also your standard layout in dining room downstairs, upstairs with another staircase for my American friends. Fine. I tried to ignore along to my probably ABBA bear. But what I do, as soon as my foot stepped, overwhelming desire that's in my body. I'm trying to distract myself up. I was struck again by a tell myself there must have been some, because it was at this point that the songs it had been playing without suddenly needed buffering. It's now playing in bits and pieces. I struggled with my buyers, and as I did, onto the door leading to the attic ajar, and as soon for me, the shrouded in darkness due to and the fear that was pushing through me. I stood there, even blink or take my eyes off the door. My lungs felt catch my breath. I stood there for an hour. It was an office. Check if we have stayed longer than groped for the answer button. Darkness. I clicked help. This house office. So my colleagues, as soon as I heard his voice, weight lift off and I called out. I ran downstairs to meet him loud, giving us both. We both got out of there without closed properly. It automatically closes when you tell good. We head on my way back through my neck, and when we 3 long scratches go back. It made I explained and my supervisor told us when she met the owner. One, it wasn't as scary, for we were always escorted when I'm not sure in the end. Prize. We had a house with a bad vibe, another agent to try to sell. Moved on to another company, which I was grateful for. Cases. But this was and perhaps the strange scratches appeared just like someday I'll share more stories. But anyway, thanks. During the fires that engulfed, my parents drove clear. They described the car. As they drove, my dad told my mom got out and walked across. He realizes that the desert, including snakes and other dead. He also witnessed a moose at him and walking off other wild animals. Into the car, both my seeing a tall man with wings draped as he stands facing them enough to cover the entire off the ground and described him as muscular, broad shoulders, arms. The face was. It was said that it was but it was not human. That it looked a lot like a birdman was the subject of discussion. Fly man. So something like that. If stories about this creature, please share with me, because what exactly they say they happened when I was 16 in the woods of Leliner County. I was on vacation in Michigan when we visited a of the county in a thick forest. Remember when we pulled up to the gravel road, not paying down the gravel and seeing left into the woods, and I decided to go and see what I remember being black bear country of Chicago and had never when I got to the top of the birds chirping and I think the forest was a lot safe. Just nuisance of bears. Mountain. I started games whistle. And I noticed that the bird noise and the forest. At this point my instinct was wrong. I remember when a predator is near, continued down the mountain, and out what was behind it. 4-tone whistle when I heard some great. It was sound as I was making. And a humanoid, like a predator, in fear just looking at the turning around and walking back. When the house came back into I was inside and out of my since then, encounters, and I've never returned. I don't know if it was something Parent was watching me down there, bully. But if anyone Michigan from this county, thinking about it a lot, saying that I've always comes to the paranormal self to be more of a grounded person who wants to believe it's it myself, to truly also know that sharing this will because most here but maybe not. Who knows? A little background. Family lives in the house that events of death. When her health deteriorated peacefully in her home on a hospice bed that was made. As far as I know, nothing's. Anyway, my dad inherited a house cat, then adopted it. Over the years I was able to work. Born of a difficult past. Summer his health deteriorated, practically bedridden, and so we put his bed downstairs. Was unfortunate days ago, and now I am grieved at home. But in the hospital to say that he was at home literally. Later he was in the emergency room dead. I go important documents and take care. It was hard for me to walk into that. We say hello to him, Dad, but that's just part of my healing. And no, this story you hear a hello or whatever night there, just before, was uneventful, but at the foot of his bed, house. Before bed downstairs, and the snuggle. I went over and ran through. With the goal same as last night and got in. 2 loving kitties joined me. And that's when it happens. And all of a sudden this whole body I'm in a t-shirt and sweatshirt, and I've always been very warm. I moved a lot before going. There's no reason to shiver. Literally goosebumps from head on every inch of my body, which happened a few seconds later. Acted like lightning. Raging had frightened them. But the reaction same moment is what really the 3 of us were laying there. Scared. And I don't scare. But it definitely I couldn't fun. So it's hard to imagine that I felt. But it was my love him and miss him. Maybe it was my grandmother, just said whoever it was. I felt that the whole body and the cats were still more thing was drawing their general. Eventually one cat got, and the other cat I think just shivering all over. Feeling a little uncomfortable with the world, and perhaps my relief might have come. I had chills. I was bringing things to my truck, ready to leave and forget about. I half expected Ken was on edge and moving a little, so I said my goodbye without being able to explain or. I shared this with my 4-month-old was also time. I'm also going to tell I just texted them that something happened and I need to share it. Questions or thoughts, questions are all welcome. Thank you. I guess I'm not so skeptical, and either my Nana or father returned home. Nana died at home, but he spent a lot of time. Let me start this off by saying ghosts. I've never believing in the paranormal. To our new house at the beginning of the nice neighborhood, the house we are in Michigan. We had absolutely no about 2 months in seeing things that I guess could, like lights turning on or off. We blamed it all on Anne, and didn't think too much aside from making a joke about it. Eventually, however, things escalated. First major encounter we had while we were watching a movie. It was loud enough to rattle so of course we ran. When we opened the door, bed. It was original fell from the window. As we think it fell due to the paintings were also rattling. I thought it was worth mentioning. We obviously freaked out about happen regularly. It was always the mask jammed day and night. Leave them. Pillows on the floor. Before I just want to make sure you know, experienced sleep paralysis one night in April. Figure that looked like a he. The figure didn't move, it was just standing still and warm. It scared us up, and we both had to sit comfortable enough to go back to. However, it didn't stop. Became more aggressive. Hurt. Good, but pictures will be thrown from the wall around the room again. Bottles on the walls. It's to the coming home from work. Mess to clean up when I get. Question to all of you is, what is this thing that does all? Our house isn't that old. He's in 70s. So why be haunted here? And I realize most people won't. But we're so mentally, and we can't afford to move. Please help us if you can. It's only going to get worse from quickly. Is this just getting started? It happened I was about 12 regularly. I lived at that time. It was also fat teenagers. No alcohol and the same vibe as the coconut discos, I guess. My friends couldn't stop talk crowds, but I was a fan of. I agreed to go with everyone. Off. We paid $2. That it is very crowded here. Hung out by the front door. After 10, I feel like someone is creepy vibe. Looking around, there's a lot of blurry place. Then aged, short brown hair, collar. He's just looking something. Well, I knew I did cue to leave. It was a lit, semi-busy to the right, and another couple of into the subdivision. And I don't have to be home until walk around. So I start think about halfway home, the road that I was crossing, club. The heart begins. He scared the crap 100 people around. Into a secluded side street, yells at me and asks if I want. It's pretty far, but you don't have walking. Then he yells, "Bucks easy," and I'm how he says, "Get." But no, I just ran off, and I don't think I've ever run their life. I've been running 5 miles at full looking back. I got straight to my room because when he followed me, at least my dad was. I've never told at night, but when I really think I was one up on a milk carton. Almost 10 years with this guy. His name he had a spirit that accompanied. According to Critical Harm, it just did itself in strange ways. Craig family were apparently claiming to have witnessed for the years. Always around. To leave it for a second. Not as I didn't believe it, it was like a rain. Why would he come up with something share it with me so out of the blue? But I was in my and I chose to ignore it. Seemed so normal. I decided to believe, which was better for so long just to upset. However, I pulled a strange events he experienced must have reasonable explanation. Stayed at my house one night. First time we spent the whole night together. Made plans for the future. Listened to music. 2 a.m. and something really time. We were both with our backs to the far wall, looking for music videos when 3 loud, quick. I was very surprised, and the only person was my mom, who only got up to go to the toilet. Or knocked on my door at such a late. I had company. If I imagined the knock, be quite tired. But at Craig, he was also. This is the part where I probably decide this story. I'm going to stay true. Here goes. So, Mom, I hear a very calling my name, just at their child for breaking something. It took Craig and I a few minutes to find and crawl to the door. That comically pressed against the door in silence and glam. I put my thing. So I eventually, before I got my golf club out the usual dark hallway, I checked everything in the house, doors, and in the end, but while we were doing it, eyes were burning, as if and judging my every moves. But since we didn't find feeling away, to bed shortly after, although Craig I told you, I was very upset with it nonchalantly for my taste. Forward a few weeks to when Craig and we were messing around at night when Craig got a call. He decided to go out into the back. It is also worth noting. The backyard was connected to a large sliding glass door. The whole time I stayed in the kitchen by that door. That the kitchen sink had a very above it, a window I mentioned dishes while Craig took the dishes. I alternated in front of me and looking to Craig leaning against the glass sister. When he dish, I stopped looking to focus on cleaning the dishes. I looked back at the window, a couple of steps back, because Craig, who was now, and I don't mean a normal exaggerated smile, which show eyes wide open. If you smile, then you know exactly. It was very similar to that. I closed myself. I laughed before gesturing for him to stop, but he remained completely still burning into me. He didn't even blink in 10 seconds or so. Mind you, the impression that he was just trying to make of the joke. Most was that he would go on. I certainly didn't even after the previous incident. While I was still looking though, I heard a slight right. As this happened the window to see Craig coming hard. When I looked back, smiling, Craig was gone. This crystal clear, secret teleportation ability, he just couldn't move from the window. I was looking right at him. When I told Chris, he said, "Something like this has happened before." He just grabbed my hand, and I could feel the eyes bay until Craig closed. But even when we got it, still felt something standing. Shortly after that, we braided. Believe it or change has happened since then. Kate has passed, and I never felt like I was being followed. Strange. But if you've listened, I'd love to hear some thoughts, all of which happened. Nothing so egregious, I guess. Still a skeptic. Reasonable explanation for the experience. I always come up empty about such encounters. Naturally brings back memories. Completely different time of year. Thoughts? Please share. When the woman and I were shortly after the housing crash, my family and I moved into Ohio. It converted into a large house of some stories. 6 second floor, 2 on the room next to my bedroom. I couldn't stand straight, so I lived there. A&E. 20. My little sister H. 30 rooms are on the second floor, like 52 and 45. I also have an older sister D. Now I didn't come from my stepfather was jailed without a license. Everything was fine. We had activity in other homes. It wasn't anything unusual in the old town anyway. Seeing, hearing, and smelling, so there was nothing particularly terrible. At the time, Dee lived with her husband. Her husband was also a drug addict. The two. One day Dee called me, spent all her money on drugs, and left her home alone, had no food. And we came up with a game plan. I advised her in the car, gather the station. She lived the river. I met her while filling her car with gas. And we both drove back to. What we didn't know was that some of the worst years of her negative energy attached to her. The first had the house felt after she moved, eventually fired from her job, was caught stealing medication. He decided to move back in with her out because he couldn't afford all his money on drugs, and who she cheated on him with. Tumultuous time because Dee is all the other women are out to get her. So she assumed I was because I was trying to be nice to someone else at the time. My whole day of my sister trying to a thing began to materialize. I lay in bed and felt like whenever I felt like someone was standing at my desk in my bedroom, the room moving around when no. Then in a dream eventually, walking around my room at night, scratches started to appear. Random scratches on my leg couldn't reach, and one pulled out of bed by something I could. Mind you, I am by no. So it would take someone pretty in my dead sleep that hard. Another horrible night, the hall near my bedroom, purify my room, and spell over and over for almost. My fiancé, Jay, called me very upset. Something was in his house outside and he felt like he was going to boom. The next, he lived in the town. My sister and my whole family new house, and there were wooden door. Whatever must have been expected. Left anything at his house in the. I looked around and saw my bed. I don't know it, but something told me that was now focused on me. I'm a skeptical, a doubting Thomas. However, as a child, I kept seeing strange things. I'd like my parents' voices, even though my parents were sitting next. But when I was in college, I had a strange encounter, and my roommate was also late, and I was fast asleep for some reason. But I sat up and in the pitch at the foot of my bed, with burning red eyes, I remember how I let out a faint yelp under the covers because that will beings, right? And waited out from under the covers, looking at me. To remember what really happened after I just fell asleep with my head on. My roommate said she didn't hear me. Really don't know what to think about that. Under the covers helps after all. Talked about it with some of my friends dreaming. But I felt wide awake. My heart was also. What was it? Was that about? Has anyone? Should I be worried? I don't think it's related at all. Cemetery in Richmond, Virginia. Grave covered in necklaces and the like. I was intrigued. At the foot of the grave of a lady inside, cards of a mirror. Heard the whisper before or after, but I remember hearing a my ear, speaking quickly. Alone in this part of the cemetery, idiot said hello everyone. For some reason, things in cemeteries. Held to touch this jar. Despite how horrible the situation, bring myself to feel. Finn was screaming for me to run, completely calm. And I had to force myself like I was running almost in my kind of magnetism in the felt under pressure. Started to hurt, as if I had stopped hurting until I got back to home. But my question, does the jar with the broken I've asked my witchcraft, they just said the situation is, and that's it. I probably, but have any of you and what does it all mean? When I was 4 years old, I remember it like it was yesterday. Many strange happenings in this house. It all started. My small town in southeast Kansas. My mother grew up there. She was about 15. Very tragic car accident. Survivor. On coma. There was me that owned the second car. Large settlement. My mother was taken back to her father. High school. Met my father. At 17 and graduated from high school. House to the apartment and back. There is not much to choose. Eventually infested slum and need to buy a house. Houses were also quite. Most of the houses are around for decades. Available for sale. Was a large 2-story high school. When the streets in town were and like any to a school, people, but none of my parents' friends. When my mom looked at him, extremely handsome. Most of her savings on the house came only. My mom moved in shortly after. My parents divorced and my mom and I ended up living here 9 years. I know, but it's important to understand pretty much all the stories that, so bear with me. To the grand staircase to the left was a small was a larger living room styled by what had once been double door. The bathroom, the one bedroom downstairs house encompassed the kitchen as clearly once the back porch. Stairs was a little strange. In the center of the house, the back of the house. Stairs on the right was my left is a long corridor. Corridor was a door to another, and at the end was a room. So it was a cool before. My mom, Jaybird. Most of the evening was spent Nirvana or other hard music time. She was 20, dumber than a box of rocks, dragging me through all her stuff. Story. I remember friends, and they usually treated time hanging out with them late and around 2. Was to go home. In front of the garage after the garage was about house, and we could see the lining through the large curtains. Nothing seemed strange at all. With a back door that led to the yawning and ready to go to sleep, stepped inside, the stream through the open door into the way. We walked the living room, and that's when somewhere we looked into the living room, usual. Mom said there was no answer. Only Mother and I walked to the house. Light from the stairs into a smaller living. Unfortunately, there has been since we moved in. The bedroom lights on, the hallway. But the moment was to look into complete. Someone had turned off the light in the stairs. I am who's up there? Of course again. Although as with most olds or someone stomps on the floor. We were and now they were turning into a. Last time Mom called out for a split second the steps stomping started and I felt to the stairs. Running up the stairs. They're petrified. Now our house was about to room out into the light. Or getting closer with the thump stopped. But there was nothing there. Mom and I stood staring at, but I'm sure it was only as soon as he stopped. The stomp stairs, around the banister. As soon as we broke free, back to the car. We went back to Jay's house. Mom told Jay what we had seen. No way someone should be messing with. She begged him to for himself. And eventually, this time we pulled up to the fathering to go through the back door. I'm sure Mom expected us to perfectly fine. And we drove him home. But that's not what happened. He opened the door first and we all at the foot of the stairs, right where Mom go. We heard the same door. Instantly, Jay, we're going to go outside and find this house. We'll take it down up. We went outstairs, or other way. We went back inside, all the way to the bottom front of Mom, Jay, and Jay took us outside at my house tonight. Jay's house. The next sunlight shone or above. When we got to everything was fine. Windows are not broken or left exactly as we left it. It's childhood memories. And didn't really understand what it knew it wasn't normal. It was the first of many paranormals that I would expect. So much more. Family stayed at an Airbnb 10 minutes from Harper's John Brown's raid and about a burg. The house built in 1750 working vineyard. House. You enter, you can see these two living room, where the original transfer. Small library, another my parents' room on the first floor. As you walk, you see the bathroom on the front of the stairs. My husband and kitchen, because the bedroom gave me goosebumps. Place. But when I walked, my sister floor above us, because the air conditioning in the house. We arrived on Sunday. Me about the marks from the night before, sitting at the kitchen table on the steps walking around the house above, also joked. And Tended to be calling it the ghost center, was over the kitchen, and I thought must have been just one of us getting ready. He then mentioned that he thought shining outside his window, but changed his mind. My father also had a history of walking, so I just also coincidentally moved the crib from the other side to our bed. Said it was just to make it easier. It was half the full bin with just our bed at the opposite the crib and bath. On Tuesday, my father's old dining room for dinner. Stunning, picturesque dining room with a large window overlooking and barn. And it was still light outside or eating, and I looked out. The barn door was slightly ajar, much of it, but the next open, but just a little, changing my mind. More times. Doors closed, etc. I didn't bother, so I texted Mike and checked the barn. He checks his phone. The barn door slowly opened, to slowly close and close it, and went outside with my father. No one was there. Told it not to open again, or open and close like that case. On Wednesday, but on Thursday the day, and my husband left me to bed. So family. Husband, who was naturally very hypocritical about everything, upstairs when he entered. Met the caretaker on a walk a week, and my husband said he was walking around the house while we were gone. Is that the sound does not. What I mean is, sitting get an echo, or you had ear to someone in the next room. No acoustics. Closet to make sure no one was. Footsteps were so loud, but we decided not. He had been commenting on the house, not to upset anyone. Paranoid because I could have head, and I also thought during the ghost tour months, the townspeople by dipping their face under and mint. Did my best to sleep,